I got home at 11 in the morning because the air conditioning in my building went out. I usually ride my bike back and forth to ride the 4 miles to work. This day I did just that. So, the ride up to my house was silent. Not that that's what I was aiming for. I pulled into the backyard as usual, a little early. My wife, Nell, was sitting on the patio in a shift dress and bare feet, nothing out of the ordinary. Our neighbor, Blake Downing, was also sitting on the patio in gym shorts and a tight t-shirt. That was unusual. There was a beer on the table in front of them. They sat next to each other in a double swing. There was hardly any room for either of them. When I saw them, they were facing each other, and his hand was on her shoulder. They didn't notice me for probably 3 seconds. I didn't stop where I usually put my bike. I rolled right out onto the terrace. That's when they noticed me. Nell looked confused and asked, "Bobby?" Blake quickly jumped off the swing. He had a concerned look on his face. Blake is an imposing man. He is 5 feet tall and slender. He had red hair until he lost it and started shaving his head. He was 42 years old and had been away from soccer for a few years due to a shattered knee. Scars were visible on his left leg. The year before, he had moved to our area and started teaching self-defense classes at the local YMCA. I watched some of them, but did not participate. A few years before that, I had trained in hand-to-hand combat myself. Now in my 40s, I was still practicing it. I didn't like Blake's teaching style because he was a bit self-aggrandizing in his classes. He had 1 class for men, 2 for women, and 1 mixed class. Nell was teaching the women's class. She asked me if I wanted to take the mixed class with her, but I said no. Mostly because it occurred to me that I could take Blake down, even though I was 4 inches shorter in height and 35 pounds lighter. He'd make sure of that quickly. And, since there would be women present, he would likely react. There could very well have been a real fight, and I wasn't at all sure who would do what to whom. I ended up getting farther and farther away from my usual spot, but now he was here. I said, "Why don't you get me a beer? I'll be right down." I leaned my bike against a tree and ran past them both, went inside and went upstairs. I walked over to my small gun safe and pulled out a baby Browning .25 semi-automatic pistol from there. I loaded it by putting 1 round in the chamber. I put on a new pair of shorts and a loose, long t-shirt. I slipped the gun into my side pocket and jogged downstairs. They were now sitting across from each other, and Nell was still sitting on the double swings. I saw a 3rd can of beer on the table, an unopened can. I didn't bother to sit down. The 2 of them were still uncomfortable. I said, "The air conditioning went out in the office." That's all I said. Over the years, I've learned that it's better to let others start a conversation that might be uncomfortable. So, I looked at each of them. For an extended period of time, neither of them spoke. As I realized, they were facing a dilemma. They could decide to address the elephant in the room, the one they seemed to be making out when I arrived, or they could have had the nerve to try to ignore the question. Finally, Nell said, "We were just talking about self-defense classes, Bobby." I replied, "Oh, because it seemed to me that there was a lot more going on, or about to happen. What do you think, Blake?" He paused. He said, "I think I should leave." "Why were you even here, Blake?" He said, "I don't want to get involved, Bob." "Well, I think that says it all. Don't you, Nell? Your boyfriend doesn't want to discuss what was going on when I got home." She lowered her eyes. She said, "He's not my boyfriend, Bobby." "No." "You were just about to kiss him when I arrived. I saw what I saw. It's useless to deny it. So maybe I need some kind of explanation." Blake became enraged. He spat out, "So what if we were going to kiss? She wanted it, and so did I." I looked at Nell. "Really?" "Yeah, I'm sorry. You know, that class, he's so... Blake said, "Much stronger and bigger than the ones she's used to. So there's nothing you can do about it." Nell said, "Blake, shut up. We made a mistake, and now we won't do it." "Why not? Bobby isn't doing a damn thing here. None of the husbands do a damn thing. They're all wimps." I wondered briefly how he still lived. I said, "You need to leave right now, Blake. I was invited. Now you're not invited." He turned to Nell. "I'm not invited?" She replied, Yes, you're not invited." I said, "Well, go on then." I pointed to the gate. He lived at the end of the street. And do not come back. He stood 12 feet away from me and had to walk past me to get to the gate to the yard. I reached into my pocket but didn't pull out my gun. I stepped back a little so he could pass. He hesitated. I could see the indecision on his face and in his gesture. I pulled my hand out of my pocket with the gun, let it dangle by my side. He stared at me. He said, "Coward! Take the gun out!" Nell shouted at him, "Just walk away, Blake. He'll shoot you." His face turned as red as his hair. "He's not going to shoot anyone." But he moved toward the gate, the path that led him between me and Nell. When he was beside her, he lifted her in his arms and tried to kiss her. She shrieked and turned away. I shot into the air, which scared the hell out of both of them. He turned quickly, saw me pointing the gun, and walked toward the gate. But he staggered, walking slowly, looking over his shoulder. I'm tired of all this. Time to get it over with. I took the magazine out of the gun and shook around out of the chamber. I tossed it all on the ground behind me. I moved towards him, but not quickly. He smiled and squared off. Nell was yelling something. Neither of us cared. I kept going straight at him, putting my arms out in front of me. When I was in range, he threw a right-handed punch to my head. It was a quick, hard move, but I wasn't there when he should have hit me. I hit him in the neck on the carotid artery. It slowed him down and stunned him. He wasn't used to real combat. I was. I hit him in the ribs with my left, then a right to the kidney as he turned away. He went down, wheezing. He tried to roll away, but I chased him. When he got up, I kicked him in the ass. I thought a kick in the ass was appropriate. He went down again, but he was pretty tough and resilient. He got up and I let him do it. He didn't look back as he jogged off. He disappeared around the corner of the house and I followed him, watching as he reached the street and turned toward his house. Then I turned around and jogged back to the patio, where Nell was frozen in some strange pose, holding her neck with her right hand. I walked past her, drew my gun, reloaded it, and picked up the spent shell casing. She turned to look. I walked past her, picked up my beer, and went into the house to take a shower. I figured she could follow Blake into his house and comfort him if she really needed him. When I got out of the shower, she was sitting on our bed. Just as I was about to plop her on the floor and fuck her hard, I heard a noise. Someone was coming up the stairs. I drew my .32 caliber pistol. Blake appeared in the doorway, pointing a black pistol, holding it sideways like in some movie. I shot him in the head as he fired around. I later discovered that it had hit the wall at floor level. He went down permanently. There was only a small hole left in his bald head. But he was dead. Nell started screaming. I picked up the landline and dialed 911.